I believe that this is day 6 of our 30-day challenge. I want to believe you are getting value and you are learning something. My name is James Olokesusi once again, and this is our 30-day challenge. This is the 6th of our 30-day challenge of world transformation exposure. And I think we're getting, I believe, not just I think, I believe we're getting a lot of value. Because I know if you have been following and you're consistent with it, you can't remain the same after these 30 days because something is definitely going to change in you. It's definitely going to change in you because we've been talking about, we are still going to be moving to the main topic of the challenge, which is venture to institution, work transformation and exposure. You see, a lot of people lack exposure system, because the level of exposure will determine how far you go. So but your exposure system must be built whereby you must know that you have to be fascinated with reading, that's studying, mentorship, going for trainings and craving seminars, platforms for visibilities, practices for applying all that you are learning. So you must continue to get yourself, putting yourself in the space whereby you can continue to appropriate what you're learning. So today I'm going to be talking about, yesterday we talked about strategic, relationship for wealth creation. But today I'm taking it I'm taking it further, So, but before I mention what we're going to be talking about today, I will implore you to subscribe, press the like button so that anybody that is, they can see it and they can watch what we are doing. They can watch what we are doing. We've been talking about wealth creation. We've been talking about wealth creation, and wealth creation is key because our knowledge of wealth creation is enough to change our life. Because if we apply it, see, learning wealth creation is like being in school, probably in an economics class, where after you have learned the principles, you have learned the theories, during the exam you'll be tested. You'll be asked of all that you have learned, and when you pass the exams, you definitely going to be promoted or certified, when you pass. So as much as in life as well, there's a life examination that will see test all that you have learned in terms of human, motivations, human psychology, through economics, that you need to still apply. So wealth creation, when you are learning wealth creation, the exam is in life. When the times of demand from you creating value, when the time to demand for you taking risk, when the time to demand for you managing finances, it's going to come to you. That's as you are passing, then you begin to attract wealth. As you are passing this examination of life, you begin to attract wealth. So that's what I believe. I believe that we are getting. That's what I believe that is happening to us. So as we are learning wealth creation, I believe that we are learning, and a lot of things are going to be changing because as we are learning. So today, like I said, I will be talking about the building a system, building a system, building a system for, because what system, you have to move from survivor, to system. Because when you build a survivor economics, that's for the poor. But when you build a system economic, that's for the wealthy. That's when you begin to transit from survivor economy to systemic economy. That's where you are moving into wealth creation. So that's what, let me quickly take you through Abraham Maslow's, theory of needs, hierarchy of needs. Because what we're going to be talking about today is linked to that hierarchy of needs. It talks about the needs, what motivates humanity. Abraham Maslow was a psychologist, who understood the heavy happenings or dreams of people. So Abraham Maslow talked about the hierarchy of the 5 hierarchy of needs. The first thing he talks about is physiological needs. Everyone has a need for physiological solution, which has to do with your food, with your shelter, with your clothing. Your food, your shelter, your clothing. You need physical things, physical needs that you need to take care of your body. Think about it. That's the first need. That's the first layer for people at the rock bottom. So that's where the need starts from. That's where the need starts from. From there, we move to safety needs. There's a safety need, where you move to a place where there's a need for job security, for protection. You have to spend. You have to ensure that you have job security. You have to ensure that there's a need for protection. There's a need to secure your continuous supplies. So that's safety need. Every man needs safety to ensure that my income continues to flow. So the third one is that the need for love and belongings. The need for love and belongings. So Abraham also talks about that as well. The need for love and belongings, whereby you need a relationship. You need relationship. You need people. You need family. Because the need of the family is on you. So how to take care of the family, build relationship, partners. There's a need for even business partners and lots of that. So he talks about love and relationship. That's the third need Abraham Maxwell talks about. The fourth one he talked about is the need for self-esteem. We can see it's getting juicier now, because as we are talking about the needs, we are getting better. We are increasing in the needs. We are increasing in the needs. So we are the needs. For self-esteem. Everyone wants to be appreciated. Everyone wants to be awarded. Everyone wants to be promoted. The need for you to be promoted, the need for you to be awarded, the need for you to be appreciated in society. So you can see, for so many people, they stayed at the level 1. They are no longer aspiring for the subsequent ones. So, but if on the journey of our word creation, you must understand these levels of needs. So as you understand the levels of needs, you are improving and working on yourself to ensure that you are aspiring. So that fourth level is the self-esteem. Everyone desires a self-esteem. So that's a need of a man. A man needs a self-esteem. The fifth one is the self-actualization, to which you fulfill purpose. Everyone needs a sense of actualization, a sense of fulfillment. I plan to run masters, I plan to run doctorate, PhD, and I've fulfilled all of these things. I plan to be a governor, and I've fulfilled all of these things. I plan to fulfill purpose in certain area of your life. You have a purpose. So you have all these things. Is a need. So that's why he talked about those 5 levels of needs, which you must really talk about. So now let me move from that to the business of day. We talk about system for word creation, but we're highlighting that part is the part we're highlighting in today. We are looking at the mental model for billionaires, mental model for the wealthy, mental model, so that we can look at what are the way their mental modeling works, how it works. The number one thing is that the way they picture things that makes it work. So I've told you, word creation is all about learning. You have to learn it. You have to see the way it works so that you can appropriate it. So the mental modeling is number one thing they do, the wealthy people do, is that they have this long-term thinking. They have long-term thinking, because we are trying to move from Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs to see the hierarchy through which people propel to the point whereby they are able to aspire to our need drives us to create wealth. Our need drives us, to aspire to create wealth. A lot of people don't aspire to be anything. They are not driven enough. So we have to look at that. So what we are going to be saying now is that mental modeling, how it's the wealthy people think through the how they model their thinking faculty. That the first thing, like I said, is that the first one I mentioned is the fact that they have this long-term thinking. They have a delayed gratification. They invest for a long-term process. You see, it takes the poor people to be looking for. That's why you see, in the environment where there are so much gambling, betting, all of those bets and relax that is within the poor community, poor environment. Because the wealthy people don't invest in such a thing. The wealthy people invest in a long-term, investment. Nothing that they say bring money now, get 30% investment returns on investment or get 50% returns on investment. No, they invest in things. They know that the investment takes a while, and they're patient with it. So it's a long-term thing. It's a long-term. They have this long-term thinking. They have delayed gratification. That's why a lot of people are falling to people like CBEX, scams, and lots of that. So that's why a lot of poor people, all they ever make in their life is to use to pay bets, because they are looking for quick fix for their poverty. So the wealthy people, they have this long-term thinking, delayed gratification. Number two thing they have is that they are strategic. They are strategic relationship thinking, because they are always looking at what best relationship can really complement what they are. Who can we partner with? Who can we relate with? So that's why they are always, most of the time when they do things, they do it by because of the fact that they will need this person. So that's why before they attract anybody into their circles, they see what yesterday I talked about the mutual benefit. I talked about the value based, value based, my mindset towards strategic relationship. So when one of the people are going to a relationship, it is strategic. How does this benefit me? How will this help me in the near future? And that's why they give EBA. That's an emotional bank account. So they have this emotional bank deposit. So when they are doing something to one man or to people, they know that they will need favor. They can give patience, they can give support, they can give this thing to reap favor, to withdraw favor later. That's why you see a lot of, in those days, Dangote's rising to this level. He has always been supporting government in power. So during election, they will support them, pump money, silently. By the time they get to power, they favor him. The same thing Elon Musk did with Trump. Elon Musk supported Trump so much, and getting good policies from Trump. So you see, they always give ever. That's emotional bank deposit, emotional bank account. They have that. So they are looking for who to support, who to partner with. That's why, as a matter of fact, the royal family are some wealthy people. They pledge a marriage alliance among their children because they want the wealth to remain. They want strategic partners. They are strategic in their relationship. They are strategic in their relationship. So they are always thinking on what benefit can we have? What can you add to me? That's before they begin to do and go into a relationship. They are always thinking, what can you add to me? So that's the thinking of the wealthy people. They think in that line, and they have this system thinking. They have system thinking. Okay, before I talk about system thinking, let me talk about scaling thinking. They are scaling thinking. That means they are always looking at whatever product they have. They begin to power it into thousands or into millions. If I sell this, if I sell about 10, if I sell about 1,000, if I sell about 10,000, if I sell about 1 million. So they are always looking at the scaling. They picture the scaling even from the beginning. The poor are always looking at, okay, let me sell one, let me sell two. But the wealthy people, they are scaling thinking faculty. Okay, how many can we sell to get to support profit? Okay, what about if we have it, about in thousands? You see, there are some wealthy companies that are producing, but they are not dealing with that 200. They are looking at 5 naira or 10 naira profit on one, raised to power about millions. They are producing on a daily basis. That's what they are looking. It's a game of numbers. They are always looking at the scaling. So another one that they are thinking how things are structured or automated to continue to yield wealth to them. How things are structured, how things are structured to continue to yield wealth to them. They are always looking at that. So that's the way it works. Our things are structured and that continues to yield wealth to them. So they are always looking at that system. That's why we're talking about system thinking. They have this system thinking. How can we structure it in a way that even when we are not there, it continues? That's why they are always looking at who can work, fit into this role, fit into that role. You think it's because they have the money, not because they have the money. They try to automate the operations of every business. You know, sometimes you tell people, people come for me for counseling in their business, I say, oh, your business, you need to employ people to assist you. You need to employ people to really work with you. They say, oh, but we don't have the money to pay the person. It's not just about paying in the first place. It's about, the person may say, oh, we don't have enough profit to keep paying. See, somebody supporting you and building a team. That's what scales the business. That's what builds system upon which even when you are sick, the business is still working. The business continues. So the wealthy people have this system thinking. No matter what you're doing, they have this system thinking. So I want to say this as I begin to round off, that wealth thinking mental model, of the wealthy people is what set the framework or the platform for actualizing wealth. You have to understand how you should think. If you're going to be wealthy, how does the wealthy people think? They think long-term thinking. They think strategic relationship. They think scaling thinking. They think system thinking. So that's the way they think. That's what they think. So you must understand all of these things so that you work in that manner as you preparing yourself. I've told you, learning word creation is like being in a class. The examination will come after you have learned a while the principles, and you write the principle, you answer questions that be asked of you. That's when you pass in that class. The same thing, examination of life will come to you. As you're going about your business, are you thinking scaling? How many of these products, how many of this service, how many contracts do I need to really take so that we can begin to break through? And who do I need to train? I told a friend of mine, he said he used to have some contracts outside the country, inside the country and there. I said you need people to train that you can trust. They can help you to work on this project. Train them. You can't say, oh, there's nobody to trust. There's nobody to trust. There will be always one person to trust if you treat them well. So you can't go far on your own. You can't go far on your own. Like African proverb, he said you can go fast, but to go fast you have to go together. You can go fast on your own, but you can't go far without you going with somebody. So train people, build system that can support your growth, and that's and okay. Let me just add this to the thinking of the mental model of the wealthy people. They have this growth thinking as well. Growth thinking. They are always improving, willing to do better. They are always measuring themselves with the people who are better than themselves. They are always measuring themselves with people who are ahead of them. They don't hang around mediocre, so they are growing. They challenge themselves on growth. They challenge themselves to do better. They are after growth. They go for seminars, they go for conferences, they go for meetings, they are reading books all the time. They have this growth thinking, growth mindset. They are always willing to grow because they know that the thin line between the level they are back to poverty is knowledge. And the thin line between level they are to the next level is still knowledge. So they have this growth mindset, not the fact that a lot of people, because they are graduated from university, you feel that was where knowledge ended. No. Knowledge is a continual exercise. You continue to learn. The day you stop learning, the day you start dying. So they have growth mindset, growth thinking. I must continue to do better. I must continue to grow. I must continue to learn. That's why they get exposed. They are getting exposed into things, like I said earlier, mentorship, learning through reading, going to a conference and likes, through, practicing through platforms, they are growing. They keep growing. They keep growing. So you must continue to grow. These are the way the world people think that helps them to really achieve great things. I want to draw the curtain here. I believe that today you have learned worthy, and that's the way it works. Once you begin to appropriate this, apply this in your life, you see it's going to work for you. Today is the day 6 of the 30-day challenge. Once again, my name is James Olukesusi. Make sure you subscribe and like, and so that you can watch more of our videos. It's going to change your life. Stay blessed. See you tomorrow, same time, 9 o'clock. Bye for now.